What's up, guys, and welcome into another podcast here. I am your host, the Philly Celtics fan. A lot of recent Celtics news has come across our feed, whether you're on Instagram, Twitter, whatnot. You're definitely seeing a lot of rumors and news speculating around the Boston Celtics, and obviously, I'm going to get into all of that. But before we get into the podcast, if you guys are not already, make sure to subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you don't miss any new videos, and don't forget to leave a like down below. Also, comment down below what future videos you guys would like to see from me as well. But without further ado, let's get into it. Obviously, the main hot topic going around is, will Giannis Antetokounmpo get traded to the Boston Celtics this offseason? This has been a red hot rumor, really for the past month or so now. It really seems like it's going to be either Miami or Boston, or maybe a slim chance of him staying in Milwaukee as well. But I think Boston has officially jumped Miami in the rankings for where Giannis will go this offseason. Obviously, the main thing is, will the Celtics be willing to trade Jaylen Brown for Giannis Antetokounmpo? Jaylen Brown just had an MVP caliber season, averaging all career highs across the board, leading a gap year Celtics team to 56 wins. And obviously, you know what happened in the playoffs, but without Jason Tatum, to take that team to 56 wins, to play like an MVP all year, with a group of guys that probably shouldn't have won 56 games, it was really impressive. It was, like I said, the best we've seen of Jaylen Brown. And I've been an advocate for this. I've said it before. I don't want us to trade Jaylen Brown. I've enjoyed watching Jaylen Brown. I've watched him his entire career with Boston. Him and Jason Tatum. I've watched them get drafted. I've watched them play. What has it been? I think 9 years together. Like, I don't want to see that end. Right. I know it was awesome to see them. Finally get to the mountaintop and win a championship together. So if it does end between Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, at least we got to see them win a championship together. That is the most important thing. But I think that they can still win more championships together. Like I said, I've been saying this. I don't want Jaylen Brown to get traded. I don't think it's necessary. I just think you have to put the right guys around them, to get back to that mountaintop to win another championship. Obviously, the New York Knicks are the reigning champions now, the 2026 NBA champions after a dominating playoffs. They beat the Spurs in 5 games. So now, obviously, Brad Stevens, he's going to have a little bit of extra motivation this offseason to try to, bring the Celtics back to being a title contender. Because honestly, after blowing a 3-1 lead in the first round, I don't think you can really go into the next season as a title contender without making, major moves this offseason. And Brad Stevens, in his, uh, presser, after the season presser that he had, he made it clear that he's going to do whatever it takes to get this team back to that point where they were in 2024, being the top team in the East and being a team that can win a championship. And, obviously, I know Brad, has probably a great relationship with Jaylen Brown, coaching him and just being the manager of the roster for, his entire career. I don't think that's going to change the fact that, Brad Stevens wants to win. And if he views that as, I got to, move on from Brown and, bring in Giannis Antetokounmpo, I think he will, make that change. But Brad Stevens, the one thing you have to respect about him is that he is always going to do, no matter what it takes, to win, to try to win a championship for the Boston Celtics. And obviously, unbiasedly speaking, obviously I know that Giannis Antetokounmpo is the better player than Jaylen Brown. There's not really much of an argument there. Giannis is a 7-foot guy that is just insane at getting downhill. Is a terrific playmaker, outstanding rebounder, a defensive player of the year, a guy that can average 30 points. The only weakness in his game is, his ability to shoot the ball. But I think over the years he's gotten better, with that aspect of his game. But yeah, Giannis is obviously the better player than Jaylen Brown, and obviously a lot of people have been talking about, the dynamic of what a duo could be between Jalen or Jason Tatum and Giannis Antetokounmpo, and it could be scary as hell, right? Obviously, um, with the way Jason Tatum plays, right, he has turned into a terrific playmaker. His ability to make big guys better around him. Obviously, he doesn't need to make Giannis better. Giannis is already an MVP player. But the way Tatum made Neemias Queta better, he made Luke Cornett better. Just his ability to play the two-man game with the big guy, uh, you know, being able to get them involved, whether that's throwing oops for them, just finding them on the pick and roll, whatever it is. Jason Tatum, the past couple years has been just a true playmaker. averaging career high in assists the last past couple of seasons. So I think that that could absolutely work between Tatum and Giannis. The pick and roll between them would be scary because we already know how crazy Giannis is around the rim with his freak athleticism. Tatum being able to find him, and then it's really going to force defenders to pick who you're going to go after, Tatum or Giannis, and that's going to be a tough decision either way. It's probably not going to work in their favor. So I am really excited, if we do get Giannis, to see what that duo can bring for this Celtics team. But obviously, just another thing that I was thinking about is how Giannis, can fit in with the Joe Mazzulla playstyle. I know a lot of people are saying, well, Giannis isn't a three-point shooter, so how is he going to, fit in uh, with Joe Mazzulla and his system? I think it's pretty simple. I think it's having Giannis get downhill, right? Giannis is a guy that's averaged like 6 assists throughout his entire career. He's a good playmaker because of the way he's able to attack and get downhill, right? He's a 7 foot freak, athlete that can get downhill with absolute ease. And, majority of the time, he's going to draw in multiple defenders, maybe two defenders, maybe even three defenders because, he is so hard to contain. He's always probably going to get past that first defender. There's, very few people in the league that are going to be able to contain Giannis when he is going downhill. And then what are the options you have when you get downhill? You're going to have guys like Peyton Pritchard, Derek White, Jason Tatum, Baylor Shireman, Sam Hauser open on the wing in the corner. And he's going to be able to have that option of, oh, do I want to finish the ball, finish with it, maybe draw some contact, maybe just get 2 points, kick it out to one of those guys like I just named and get an open three. Like they're going to have all these options if you have Giannis Antetokounmpo. And it is going to make this team really scary if despite him not being a good 3-point shooter, if you just put good 3-point shooters around him, that is going to make this team really scary. I'd say the only thing that could potentially be a problem is the clogging of the paint between maybe Giannis and Neemias Queta. Neemias Queta is not a 3-point shooter. He can't stretch the floor like we've seen with previous bigs we've had, like Kristaps and Al Horford. Um, Obviously, Neemias Queta is an incredible player. He had a really good year last year with Boston. But yeah, it would, beg the question, can they coexist down in the paint? Will it get too clogged? I think that they'd figure out a way to make it work for sure. But I also think this brings attention to another guy Boston could bring uh, in the Giannis deal if they were to make this trade, and that is Bobby Portis. There's been a lot of rumors that Bobby Portis is also going to get traded with Giannis Antetokounmpo. If Giannis gets traded to the Celtics, I think that this is a must. If the Celtics are going to trade Jaylen Brown, and potentially like a younger guy like Ugo Gonzalez, which I hope they don't, along with future first round picks, I think it would be smart to get Bobby Portis back in this deal as well. Because like I said, I think Boston, what they lacked this year was kind of a strike big. And I know they had Luka Garza, but I just don't think Luka Garza is that effective. To be honest, I think he's a solid player, but I just don't think he really fits the mold. And then, obviously they brought in Vucevic at the trade deadline, trading Anthony Simons, which was obviously a very interesting move considering, Vucevic absolutely was just terrible for the Celtics in the regular season and in the playoffs. He got benched in that game 7 against Philadelphia. He's going to walk. Boston's made that very clear that, Vucevic is probably not going to return to this team uh, in the 2026-2027 NBA season. But yeah, I think a good guy to bring in that can really kind of play like, Porzingis and Al Horford the way that they, could just spot up in the corner, spot up on the wing. That's Bobby Portis. Bobby Portis shot 45% from three last year. He's been a 40% 3-point shooter for the last handful of seasons that he's had. And honestly, like I think that this would be a great move. I don't think he has to start per se. He's been a 6 man of the year candidate. Um, I think he can continue to come off the bench. And, like I said, this is a guy that's played with Giannis for multiple years of his career. So I think that they already obviously have that chemistry. I think this would be another thing that would really encourage Giannis to come to Boston if Bobby Portis comes along with him. I would really like this. I made a video before saying, a few people that I think the Boston Celtics should bring in this offseason. I said Bobby Portis was one of them, just because of what he brings, his 3-point shooting ability. And like I said, with Giannis getting downhill, having options, to kick the ball out, Pritchard, White, Tatum, and Bobby Portis, like that would be insane with that many lethal 3-point shooters. I think that would just make this team so good if they were to acquire Bobby Portis in this deal. Now, talking about just the trade in itself, with Giannis and Portis potentially heading to Boston, obviously the Celtics, uh, trading Jaylen Brown, like I said, potentially a couple young guys, maybe Ugo Gonzalez or Jordan Walsh, and some first round picks. I'm not sure what exactly the Bucks are looking for, but obviously there is going to be a third team involved if they do make this trade. There's been a lot of rumors about the Clippers being involved in this deal. The Atlanta Hawks, the Portland Trailblazers, the Rockets. There's a lot of teams that seem to have interest in being a third team to acquire Jaylen Brown in this deal because obviously Milwaukee, it doesn't seem that they want Jaylen Brown. I think they want to go in a direction of just bringing in a younger player and just a bunch of like young, guys, as well as draft picks. Jaylen Brown is obviously, I think he's 29 years old now, 28, 29 years old. So I don't think the Bucks, if they're trying to shop around guys like Giannis and Bobby Portis, I think they're going to try to go in the direction of just building a young core, with guys that are like 25 or younger, like a Ryan Rollins who they have right now. They obviously have a lottery pick as well. And then if they're able to acquire another first round pick, like I think they just want to go in the direction of becoming a really young, solid team. And I think obviously a big way that they can do that is if they are able to grab the Clippers' fifth overall pick in the draft. That's been the major thing I've been seeing over the last week is if the Clippers are able to, jump in on this trade. I'm not sure exactly who the Clippers would trade in this deal to match contract salary wise, but I do know that fifth pick would be involved. But I think that's very enticing for the Bucks if they can grab a top five pick along with their pick that they already have. Next with probably other first round picks if we're being honest, and like I said, other young guys. I think that would be very enticing for them. The Clippers, obviously, they're probably I don't know if they're going to trade Kawhi Leonard or if they're going to keep Kawhi. Obviously, they just got Darius Garland. If they're able to keep Darius Garland, Kawhi Leonard, and Jaylen Brown, that'd be a crazy trio. If they were able to do that, I'm not sure exactly who they could give up. I'm about to look at the Clippers roster, um, but I did hear some rumors about Kawhi potentially going to a team like Minnesota. I don't know if that would actually happen, but that would be good for Anthony Edwards and that team. But just looking at this Clippers team, this is obviously a lot of money to try to match with Giannis and Jaylen Brown. These guys are getting paid $60 million. Um, I was hearing, Bogdan Bogdanovic could be involved in a deal. Uh, John Collins is on this team as well. Brooke Lopez, Benedict Mathurin. I'm not sure exactly the contracts of all those guys, but I think those would probably be the main guys involved in the deal. Um, in trying to get Jaylen Brown on their team. But I don't know how much I see that happening, to be honest. Um, Obviously, the other team is Portland. I think Portland is actually a candidate that could work. They have contracts that can match up with Giannis and Jaylen Brown. Jeremy Grant, Drew Holiday, they both get paid over $30 million. And they obviously have some enticing young players that Milwaukee could be interested in, like Scoot Henderson, Shaden Sharp. I'm not sure if they would be able to trade him. Obviously, I think the only untouchable guy in Portland is Denny Advia. Damian Lillard is also there. I don't think Damian Lillard's going to get traded, obviously, especially back to Milwaukee. They don't want anything to do with him again. They already tried that. But I do think Portland, they have the contracts to move. They have uh, their draft pick as well if they want to trade their draft pick. So I definitely think that they could be an option. And then you have Jaylen Brown in Portland with Denny Advia. That could be an interesting duo. Um, and then obviously the other team I was talking about is Atlanta. I think Atlanta is probably where Jaylen Brown would prefer to be traded to if he is traded at all this offseason. Atlanta is, he was born in Atlanta. So I think that, if there's any other team in the world Jaylen Brown would want to play for, I think it is the Atlanta Hawks. And obviously the Hawks, they have a solid core right now. Obviously, lost in the first round of New York, but they gave New York the most losses in, a playoff series that New York had this year, right? Giving them two losses was the most that the Knicks saw in an entire playoff series, even more than the Spurs one, which is crazy to think about. Um, but yeah, I think the Hawks, they have a really good young core. They have guys like Jalen Johnson, Nickel Alexander-Walker. They have Dyson Daniels, Onyeka Okongwu. CJ McCollum was a good fit for them if they bring him back as the veteran. Um, just a really good team in Atlanta. And if they were able to bring in Jaylen Brown, I think that that could be like their one piece away to winning or to contending for a championship, I should say. Um, Now, what would they have to trade in that deal to get Jaylen Brown? It would probably have to be a Zachary Ricochet. Obviously, had a really disappointing second season. He's not been living up to the first overall pick standards that have been set over these past 5 years with guys like Cooper Flag. Uh, so I could see them wanting to ship him off, especially if it got them Jaylen Brown. Um, I think that the only really untouchable guy for this Atlanta Hawks team is Jalen Johnson for sure. All-star season. He's a triple-double guy, averaged 22, 10, and 8 this year. He is their guy, but if they got Jaylen Brown paired with him, I think that could be really good for them. Um, Onyeka Okongwu is, a bright young center, 25 years old, had his best season in the NBA. He's a guy they might have to give up in that deal, especially if Bobby Portis goes to Boston. I think I could see Milwaukee liking to bring in Okongwu to be their young center. Um, Dyson Daniels is a guy that could have to be traded as well in this deal. A very good defensive player, uh, good rebounder, good playmaker. Just obviously struggles to shoot the ball, but those are two guys that I could see them having to give up. But I think the main guy would definitely be Zachary Ricochet. But you're gonna have to make up that money uh, elsewhere because Ricochet I think it gets paid like 13, 14 million dollars. So I think you would have to give up a couple more guys. Um, but yeah, if Atlanta, is really all in on Jaylen Brown, I think they'd be willing to give up a couple of those guys. They also have their first round pick that they could trade as well to get in on the stakes of Jaylen Brown. But I think, those are the three teams that are probably going to, you know, be the most likely to acquire Jaylen Brown in this deal. Obviously, like I was saying earlier, like the Miami Heat are another team to watch out for. The Heat could potentially grab Giannis Antetokounmpo. Um, when it comes down to who has more to offer, if you're talking about comparing Jaylen Brown to like Tyler Hero and Khalil Ware, you're gonna take the Jaylen Brown trade every day of the week because Tyler Hero, Khalil Ware, you know, they're not game changers like in the way of like they're not gonna be first or second options on a championship team, which Atlanta, LA like could be looking for, right? Those guys are solid role players, in my opinion. Nothing more. But when it comes down to comparing, Jaylen Brown to those guys, I think Milwaukee would definitely choose to trade with Boston over the Heat. Um, unless Giannis really just wants to go to Miami, and not go to Boston. But I did hear that he has interest in coming to the Celtics just because of their winning culture. He's praised Joe Mazzulla before, and just being a winning coach. So I definitely think that Giannis is fine with coming to Boston. He has a great relationship with Jason Tatum as well. I think that he would just honestly fit right in. And then I also saw a rumor that he'd be willing to re-sign with the Celtics on a 4-year, $275 million contract, I believe it was. I would hope so. If the Celtics do make this trade, they trade Jaylen Brown, we can't have another situation like Kyrie Irving because obviously we all know what happened with that. The Celtics trade their heart and soul, Isaiah Thomas. Everyone was frustrated with that. You know, that was a trade that absolutely killed me. Is when we traded Isaiah Thomas. And then what we get 2 years of Kyrie Irving, he says he's gonna resign, and then he doesn't resign with the team. And obviously the Celtics, they were fine after that. But like I don't want that to happen. If we trade Jaylen Brown for Giannis, I want to get Giannis for a very long time. I don't want to get Giannis for one season because he's obviously he's a player option the year after this. Even if it's 1, 2 seasons, I don't want Giannis for 1 to 2 seasons. If we're getting Giannis and we're trading Jaylen Brown, a guy that has dedicated his entire life to this team for the past 10 seasons, I need at least like 5 years of Giannis Antetokounmpo in a Celtics uniform, and multiple championships. So obviously that's the main thing there. But I do think that he would resign, hopefully, with Boston if that trade happened. And then, lastly, I just saw this today on Twitter. I'm not sure how true this is, but it did say the Celtics and Brad Stevens are looking for ways that they can trade for Giannis Antetokounmpo without having to give up Jaylen Brown. Do I think that's likely? Absolutely not. Do I love the idea of it? Yes. We'd probably have to give up guys like Derek White, Peyton Pritchard, um, Ugo Gonzalez, like probably just our entire rotation outside of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Obviously, I don't want to lose Derek White. I don't want to lose Peyton Pritchard. I don't want to lose Jaylen Brown. I don't want to lose the guys that we have. But if we're somehow able to get JB, JT, and Giannis on the same team together, it is wraps for the entire league. It doesn't even matter, what we put around those guys. We could pick up a bunch of vet minimum guys. I think we'd be fine because that would be the best trio of all time. That'd be the best big three that the league has ever seen. And it would kind of give you flashbacks to the Celtics back in 2008 forming that big three. But this big three would be better than that big three without a doubt. Um, I'm not sure how it would work, but it would. I'd be willing to watch it happen because those are three elite players, three guys that can be MVP candidates, be All NBA first team. Like I don't think the league is gonna let that happen. I don't think it's gonna happen. Especially um, just for kind of messing up the league, you could say, I guess. But we did see it happen with Brooklyn. They got that big three happened with James Harden, KD, and Kyrie. So it's not out the window. But I think if the Heat are looking at their options, or if the Bucks are looking at, if the Celtics say like, hey, we're not trading Jaylen Brown, if they're comparing Derek White, Peyton Pritchard, and Ugo Gonzalez and Jordan Walsh compared to like Tyler Hero, Khalil Ware, Jaime Jaquez, they'd probably go with the Heat in that deal. I think the only leverage Boston really has over Miami is probably trading Jaylen Brown, right? That's the only way I think that the Bucks choose the Celtics over the Heat in that deal. I think without Jaylen Brown, I don't think the Celtics have uh, too much of a compelling offer to match what the Heat will probably offer because the Heat have a lot of young players they can offer. Derek White's obviously an older player who obviously just had his worst season, and then Peyton Pritchard, I think would be very solid for them. But I don't know. I don't think that deal happens without Jaylen Brown, if I'm being honest. But yeah, guys, that's probably all I wanted to talk about in this podcast. Just the recent news with Jaylen Brown and Giannis. That's really the only thing going on. Uh, this offseason is Giannis. Will he get traded to the Boston Celtics? I'm not really hearing too much else about who the Celtics are interested in bringing in. It's really just been all Giannis, Giannis, Giannis. I kind of just, whether it happens or not, I just wanted to get it to get done, right? Whether he gets traded to Boston, whether he gets traded to Miami, whether the Bucks say, hey, we're not trading Giannis, I just need it to happen because I don't want this to keep going on all off season long because then it's just going to get really frustrating to really map out the future of the Celtics. What are they going to do? How are they going to approach next season? The draft is coming up within a couple weeks, so I do hope that this trade happens before the draft, and I think it will because if the Bucks really do want to get a top 5 pick like from the Clippers or just get a first round pick from somebody in a third team, in a 3-team trade from that third team, then I do think this has to happen before the draft, maybe on draft day, but I think it would happen probably before the draft if I'm being honest. But yeah, guys, that's going to do it for today's podcast. If you guys enjoyed the podcast, leave a thumbs up down below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you don't miss any uploads, and don't forget to comment down below what future videos and podcasts you guys would like to see from me. All right, guys, peace.